All right, let's talk about something called the avoidance trap. It's this hidden link between two feelings that you'd think are total opposites, burnout and procrastination.
So, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt this? You are just completely, totally exhausted. Like the thought of doing one more thing is just impossible. But then, the second you try to actually rest, your brain just goes into overdrive, right? It's racing with all the things you should be doing. It feels like this crazy paradox. You're too tired to work, but you're too anxious to stop. But what if it's not a paradox at all? What if it's actually the exact same problem?
Okay, so think about it. On one hand, you've got burnout. That's the I literally can't feeling. Your tank is just empty, total depletion. And on the other hand, there's procrastination. That feels more like, I won't do it, or, I'll get to it later. It's all about putting things off and then feeling guilty about it. So you have an empty tank, and then you have a refusal to even turn the key. How in the world could these two things be related? Well, that's what we're going to dig into.
All right, so first up, let's talk about burnout, because to really get this, you have to understand that burnout is way, way more than just being stressed.
Even the World Health Organization has weighed in on this, and they're super specific. They call it an occupational phenomenon, not a medical condition. And that's key. It means it's a direct result of long-term, unmanaged stress from your job. It's basically what happens when what's being asked of you is just constantly more than what you've got to give.
And it shows up in three main ways. First, there's that deep, deep exhaustion. And I'm not just talking physically tired. It's emotional, it's mental, it's everything. Second, you start to pull away. You get cynical, maybe a little detached from your work, from your colleagues. And third, your performance just plummets. You can't focus, your creativity is gone, and you feel like you're not getting anything done right.
I love this analogy. Think of it like an emotional battery. Everyday stress might drain your phone to 50%, but you plug it in overnight and you're back to 100. Burnout, that's different. That's when your battery is so shot it won't hold a charge anymore. A weekend off, a nap, it doesn't matter. You're stuck at 1% and can't recharge. You're just running on empty.
Okay, so that's burnout. Now, let's flip over to the other side of this coin, procrastination. Most of us think of it as, being lazy or just bad with time. But what psychology tells us now is, it's something else entirely.
Here's the big idea. Procrastination is not about time management. It's about emotion management. It's literally a coping mechanism. When a task brings up negative feelings like anxiety or boredom or that big one, fear of failure, our brain's solution is to just avoid it. And for a little while, it works. You get a little hit of relief. The problem is, deep down, it's just going to make things worse later.
And this is where you get stuck in this really nasty cycle of self-sabotage. It often starts with that fear of failure. You're worried you won't be good enough, so you feel anxious. To get rid of the anxiety, you avoid the thing you have to do, but then the avoidance makes you feel bad about yourself, which feeds into this idea of perfectionism, this if I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all mindset. It's such a classic trap.
Okay, so let's recap. We have burnout, total, utter depletion. And we have procrastination, which is all about avoiding bad feelings. So, what's the connection? Well, the hidden link, the thing that ties it all together, is this powerful mechanism called avoidance coping.
And honestly, avoidance coping is pretty much what it sounds like. It's your brain's strategy to cope with something by, not dealing with it. Putting off that scary project? That's avoidance coping. Feeling burnt out and just withdrawing from everyone? That's avoidance coping too. It's like your brain is slamming on the emergency brake to protect you from something that feels way too overwhelming.
And this isn't just some nice idea, it's backed by science. There's this fascinating study in Frontiers in Psychiatry back in 2021 that connected these dots directly. It basically said that the extreme fatigue you feel in burnout might actually be the physical result of your brain constantly trying to avoid difficult emotions. Your exhaustion is a symptom of avoidance. So what is actually happening inside your head when you're that exhausted? Well, your brain starts doing what I like to call fatigue math. The internal calculation it does for, is this worth the effort, gets completely warped. All of a sudden, tasks that are normally easy feel monumental.
And again, this is something we can actually see in brain scans. fMRI studies have shown this. If you look at this chart, you can see that when someone's brain is tired, it literally perceives the exact same task as costing way more energy than when it's rested. And this is so important to understand. When you're burnt out, avoiding something isn't a moral failing. To your brain, it feels like the only logical, rational choice to make.
So let's go back to our battery metaphor. This is literally your brain switching into low power mode, like your phone does when it hits 5%. It's not laziness, it's a survival instinct. Your brain is just desperately trying to save that last 1% of power, so it starts shutting down anything non-essential, anything that feels like it's going to drain that battery any further.
Okay, so now we can see the link, right? Deep exhaustion leads to avoidance. But what happens then? Well, unfortunately, that avoidance just feeds back into the exhaustion, creating this awful, self-perpetuating cycle.
And this creates a pattern that one psychologist has a brilliant name for: exhaustion-dependent rest. Think about that. It's where you feel like you haven't earned the right to rest until you are completely and totally depleted. You literally have to hit rock bottom before you give yourself permission to stop.
And this is where we get the classic boom-bust cycle. It goes like this. First, you push yourself, you overwork like crazy, probably neglecting your own needs until you inevitably crash. Then, you're forced to stop and rest. But it's not real rest, is it? It's filled with guilt and anxiety about everything you're not doing. And then, that guilt and anxiety becomes the fuel to launch yourself right back into overworking to make up for lost time, and the whole toxic cycle starts all over again.
The scariest part about this is that if you live in this cycle long enough, it starts to feel like your personality. You tell yourself, oh, I'm just a procrastinator, or I just thrive under pressure. But I really want you to hear this. It is a pattern, not a person. It's a set of learned behaviors, not who you are at your core. And the good news is, patterns can be broken.
So, the big question is, how do we get out of it? If avoidance is the engine driving this whole mess, what's the solution? Well, this is where things start to get really hopeful. Let's talk about the way forward.
Okay, if you remember one thing from this whole explainer, let it be this. The antidote to avoidance is not motivation. Actually, waiting around to feel motivated is just another part of the trap. The real antidote is action. Tiny, small, simple action. And there's a name for this strategy. It's called behavioral activation.
So, what is behavioral activation? It's all about breaking that cycle of doing nothing by focusing on what you do, not on how you feel. It's about taking one small, purposeful step. I mean, really small. We're not talking run a marathon. We're talking put on your running shoes. That's it. The whole idea is that you don't wait to feel motivated. You act first, and sometimes, just sometimes, the motivation catches up later.
But here's the thing. None of this works if you're still beating yourself up. The absolute first step has to be self-compassion. It means looking at your exhaustion, looking at your avoidance, and instead of seeing it as a personal failure, you see it as a signal. It's just a warning light on your internal dashboard, telling you, hey, something's not right. The way we're doing things isn't working. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. What if you could reframe this whole thing? What if your tendency to avoid things isn't a character flaw, but a message? A totally logical message from your exhausted brain, which is just trying its best to protect you? What if it's just asking, very quietly, for a different way of living?